There was a whole debacle the other day as a BBC reporter paid his 17-year-old for explicit photos. So it was very, very well known about it. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, was the
why
person
exactly
17?
Yeah.
So we don't know that, and the police are saying that there was no illegal act.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest with you, anything that the scum were to report from a person coming from Liverpool, I would.
Was it from Liverpool?
Well, as me coming from Liverpool, anything to do with the scum, as I would call it, I wouldn't give it any credence to. I think it's a great marketing ploy for them. I think it's got national publicity. I think for the first time in years, probably since Hillsborough, that it's got the whole country talking about that newspaper. I think it doesn't appear to be any criminal issues there. I think that it's just a sort of a gutter attack on someone who's got a high profile within the BBC, and I think it serves the purposes of that paper and Murdoch to attack the BBC as well. So I think a plague on that newspaper, and I think that it's totally unfair. I tell you the other thing though as well, which has struck me, people like Jeremy Vine, who obviously know Hugh Edwards before he was named, came out publicly to say that he should come out and say, well, why if you know somebody, you're a colleague, why come out publicly and do that instead of giving him a call or text messaging him? Because obviously it just adds pressure. Again, is that Jeremy Vine using it as a platform to push his own popularity and raise his own profile? So I think there's loads of problems with that story, and not least from where it comes from, which is the worst newspaper in this country.
What do you think actually happened? Was that very immoral, or is it you think it's not so bad? It's just more how the Sun reacted to it and how the newspapers made a whole big deal about it.
Would I do it? No, I wouldn't. Because I'm faithful to my wife. But everyone has their own personal lives, aren't they? That they live, and they have to make their own decisions, and that's something within his own personal life. I mean, I don't really see what relevance that's got to him reading the news and presenting the news on the BBC. And I think it's a scandal that traditionally newspapers use to stimulate sales and create discussion about it within within its readership and wider. I don't think I wouldn't condone his behaviour, but and it lacks, if you want to put a moral slant on it, there's an issue of morality there, but that's their own issue. It's got nothing to do with me.
Well, I'm going to disagree here, which is probably what you want, Ellie, because you don't want a podcast of everybody agreeing all the time. Let me say, first of all, I'm no apologist for the Sun. I'm not from Liverpool, so don't have the same hatred for the Sun as Barry clearly does. And many of my friends from Liverpool, I know feel exactly the same. And I understand that, and their behaviour over Hillsborough was inexcusable, but that's 20, 30 odd years ago, whatever it is. I do think there was a public interest here. Yes, of course, the Sun, did it partly for their own, reasons. It wasn't, as we would say in Hebrew, completely lishma, completely altruistic. I'm not going to pretend that it wasn't, but there certainly are public interests, issues here. So first of all, the parents of the person, and it's a person, they've not even said whether it's a boy or girl, the parents of the person came to the Sun in desperation, didn't ask for a penny for for their help. They came in desperation. They'd got evidence. Now, the police have said there's no evidence of illegality. Obviously, I can't comment on that. I have to accept what the police say. However, the BBC have not closed their investigation. They are still investigating. This is a man who's funded by public money. He's the top earner on the BBC. It's a phenomenal amount, just shy of $500,000 a year. I'd be happy with half of that, or even less. He's the top earner. He's their top presenter. He announced the death of the Queen, etc., etc., etc. what he's alleged to have done was reprehensible, and others have now come out as well. BBC staff members have said that he's behaved inappropriately to them, sending messages, whatever it was. So I do think there's a case to answer, even if there's no criminal case. I'm not going to say any more on that, but if there's no criminal case, there is certainly a case he has to answer to the BBC. I do think his career is finished, whatever, from that point of view. And yeah, his wife came out with a statement, said, he's got mental health issues.
And he's in hospital.
And he's in hospital. I have no doubt that is true. But interestingly, virtually the same day or the next day that she announced this, some woman from Greater Manchester was sentenced to life imprisonment for killing her child. She was on antidepressants, she clearly had mental health issues, and the judge actually said in sentencing her that your mental health issues cannot be used as an excuse for your behaviour. Now, I'm not comparing murder to what he did, but what's source of the goose is source of the gander. If somebody is deemed criminally responsible for her behaviour, even though she had clear mental health issues, then I'm afraid somebody like Hugh Edwards has to take a certain amount of responsibility. There's a lot of people who've got mental health issues, particularly since the pandemic, even more than before. They don't go around doing things like that. So I'm going to disagree and say there was a public interest here.
So if he I'm not suggesting he will, but I don't, and obviously he's not in a good mental state.
I accept that.
So what level of pain are you willing to inflict on that man?
It's not really, no, but I think what he's saying is...
Through a public,
I think what he's saying, it's not about the pain on that person, it's more about whether it was right or wrong. I think that's the difference, really. He says it's really wrong what he's done, and therefore people should know about it.
It's public interest you were talking about.
Yeah, but where do you draw the line? If you were to say... don't reveal anything that causes pain to someone, you'd never reveal anything. You'd never report on a court case because you'd say it reveals pain. I think it causes pain to the person and their family.
David Kelly, for example, during the dossier reported, ended up taking his own life, allegedly, which I think because of pressure that came through from the press trying to identify who it was, so pressure, and I think I would accept that in this case. Sure, you would. I think it depends on the type of issue, and I think if it's an issue that's to do with someone's private life, what public interest is it of yours to know what Hugh Edwards gets up to in his private life?
Right.
As long as it's legal, because it's legal.
If it's legal, yeah.
Right. Okay. If it's legal, I hear what you say, but it is in public. If he was, going,
but you're the public, so
yeah. Okay. So if he was going, like you said,
just because people are interested in something doesn't make it mean.
No, like you said, we're all faithful, like you said. So am I can assure you. But if somebody was just, had a mistress or whatever and was cheating, that would be a different story. Here, there's far more to it. This is a man publicly funded, using that publicly funded money.
Well, it's his private money now.
Well,
it's not publicly funded. It's his private money.
Well, he's paid for by the BBC. He's the face of the BBC, and he's doing things which are not. We're not talking of somebody having an affair. This is very, very dodgy and sort of dangerous ground. Maybe legally there's nothing that can be proved, but the BBC are investigating. So the fact that the BBC are investigating shows, in my view, there is a public interest. This isn't just tittle tattle. I mean, there were some collateral damage because a lot of people, including people like Nicky Campbell and Gary Lineker, were named on social media as being the people. Unfortunately, Ellie, say to you as a social media guru, sometimes social media can be, can have a lot to answer for. But isn't that the public interest expressing itself? And that's my point. So I think, for an issue where someone has transgressed in their own personal life, I don't think that's of any interest in me. For me, if my neighbour did that, would be interested in it, and I'm sure you'd be exactly the same if it was members within your own religious community. So I think
to make these things. I understand why there might be an investigation with the BBC, but this is public. This is making someone.
So are you saying any time there's an investigation in the BBC, therefore you should really talk about it?
Well, let me say one other thing here. There's more to it than even I've said. The BBC have got something to answer here because they were accused of ignoring the parents. They allegedly did not speak to Hugh Edwards for several weeks till the son got involved. They seem to be very tardy about it. So there are all sorts of public interests here. I mean, we are gonna just disagree on.
I mean
this.
that.
I think we'll just have to move on just because we're on a quick timeline. But yeah, I think you disagree quite a bit on this one.
Yes.